Hello, I hope you're doing well. Welcome back to more CSGO news. This episode revolving all around one article made by Decay. I will, of course, link it down below for all of you guys. A great read if you want to read it all the way through, as a lot of people out there typically do not. It's actually a consideration out there of Envious wanting to sign Karrigan full-time to the roster. If you guys were not aware of this, the past couple months he did spend with them for IEM Sydney qualifier. Before that, it was actually the Americas Minor for the major qualifier they failed to qualify for, but apparently now they want him full-time on that roster. And the overall debate today, the argument I want to make is should this guy be going to North America? This is not an article that says he is going to North America, but it does say of his long laundry list of options out there for teams, Envious will be one of them. So hope you guys all enjoy. Let's debate it back. Now, of course, when it comes to this debate, you guys can leave your comments down below. I'm very curious what you guys think about this. We all know Karrigan as an IGL is wanted by a lot of teams out there. Envious now added to that list is not really too much of a surprise. You think a lot of North American teams, if they could get their hands on him, certainly would. Not a lot of teams, though, have the money to buy this guy out, or at least acquire this guy, formerly a FaZe clan, but still typically under contract as well. But let's break it down. Let's go back all the way to the Envious roster and why they picked up the majority roster in the first place. If you guys had forgotten, it's actually the X-Splice core roster. They actually had a Pro League spot for as well, and that is the single reason why Envious signed this roster. No one is going to debate that topic. The only sole reason they picked up this Splice core is to retain their Pro League spot. A very notable thing for many organizations to hold down is a Pro League spot and in an ECS spot. In this case, it was the Pro League spot. Right after acquiring that roster, they kick Senfis out. They hold on to Poyo as a stand-in player for Pro League, and they hang on for dear life. And by dear, I like literally they hang on by the absolute brim. And I actually talked about this a lot. There's not a lot of videos out there because it was a very, very speculative situation of how these guys actually retained their Pro League spot, which means they would have it if Karrigan came back to the roster, or whoever they actually sign as their IGL, they'll get that Pro League spot because they barely hung on. It was actually Luminosity Gaming that was put down to that auto relegation spot because of a few things actually lining up that not many people actually covered out there. It was actually, first of all, two of Envious's victories in Pro League. Two of their very few victories came against Cloud9. I believe it was actually in week 3. Cloud9 was out of the country on 100+ ping when Envious got those two victories, and then week 4 it came down to these last two matchups for Luminosity Gaming. I believe they were also out of the country when they played their last two matches against E United, thus on high ping, and thus losing both those matches. They had to win one of them to stay in Pro League. They lost both of them, and for that reason it's Luminosity Gaming instead of Envious who went to the auto relegation spot. That means, of course, automatically kicked out of Pro League, and Envious, because of that, they got to go to relegation against two other teams. They won relegation. Congrats to Envious's roster. They proved themselves at relegation to be better than the premier teams at that point in time. They hang on to their Pro League spot, but I'm just saying, they're very lucky to have this Pro League spot in the first place to offer up for a guy like Karrigan to come and take. And then let's go to the minor when these guys actually had Karrigan on the roster, where I will say, with a short amount of time with Karrigan, they looked pretty solid. It came down to that last best of 3 against Team Furia, a very, very dominant looking team when it came to this point as well. One of the many Brazilian teams who will show up at the North American minor in the future as well. But Furia was certainly the better team. It did come down to that last best of 3, but they actually, it was being Furia, had beat Envious twice in best of 3s during the American minor. They go through alongside NRG. NRG, of course, at the time, your clear best American team. So Envious was that close, right? One best of 3 away, but you have to ask yourself, where will Karrigan stand a better chance of making the major? Now, there's many other speculative options, right? Because first of all, I want to say there's so much to actually break down here. The North American salary, the buyout, which North American teams or teams in general have the money to actually buy this guy out. Will they pay him more in North America than they will in Europe? Can he accomplish more in North America than he will in Europe? There's too many roads to take that down. I will say, I think he'll make a fair sum of money no matter where he goes. So I don't think money is going to be the necessary move for Karrigan, although we don't know his personal desires. But I think there's many other options out there besides the North American team where Karrigan can find success. And the overall question I have for you guys is, what do you think? Where does Karrigan stand a better chance of getting back to the major? A North American team in Envious, or all of his European counterpart options? So first we go to what the North American minor would be. NRG, E United, they're right back there. guys. E United did acquire the majority of Swole Patrol, which is a pretty solid roster. You have those two teams who are going to be likely favorites to go through. Then you'll have Envious. Then you'll have teams like Swole Patrol, whoever Swag can actually pull into his lineup unless he leaves somewhere else. You'll have Ghost Gaming. You'll have Team Furia also back there. That's 6 pretty solid teams right there, including Envious. And then along with them, your Team Ones, all of your other Brazilian teams who could come up, and all of your other qualifying teams who would come out of nowhere. You know, Bravado could be one of them as well, who could surprise you. That's a pretty solid standing, especially with this current Envious roster, right? When I say NRG, E United, Swole Patrol, Ghost, Envious, so on, Furia, so on and so forth, you guys might not think, wow, powerful teams, but when it comes to what Envious's current roster is, those are certainly powerful lineups to go up against, and you could say Envious has an equal chance to make it through North America to the major as they would as a part of Mouse Sports. North, 2 definite favorites at that European minor. Even an Optic I would give them the chance with. When it comes down to this current roster, I would say, if you're Cutler, if you're Drone, are you scared if you sign Karrigan? Because if they give him the ability, the choice to revamp this roster, you would think those would probably be your likely links, at least one of them to probably be replaced. I'm just being honest here. I'm being straightforward. If you're looking at weak links to replace with North American talent, those are probably your options there. Who would you bring in then is the ultimate question. You know, Tark is now gone. Fugly's now available. You have players like Android, Ye, a Rising Som. If they give him the ability to revamp the roster as much as he wants, it still leaves the question, are they strong enough to make it through that North American minor? And that's up for speculation for all of you guys. Now, of course, we bounce to the European side of things. Like I said, and like we all know, he has options. North is certainly one of them. They made it to their last best of 3. I think it was against Vitality, correct? To actually take that last major qualifier spot. Mouse Sports, they go out very early, but still a team that no matter what, with that triple core they have right now, is going to be a favorite at the European minor. But alongside them, right, you have Optic, North, Mouse Sports, you have Big, you have Fnatic, you have Valiance, and all the other European teams who qualify. It's certainly going to be a very tricky road, but when it comes down to it, the North American minor versus a European minor, he would be a part of much better teams, much more solid rosters in Europe, and that's why I would argue he would probably have just as hard of a time in North America to make the major as he will in Europe. But with Europe, you have probably a better solidified roster around you that you probably have some history, at least with some of those players, and that's why I would prefer to see this guy stay in Europe. But that's my personal opinion. Who cares about that? But that's why these videos are so fun to make, because it's such an open debate, right? Such a well-known IGL around the world. Will he go to North America? Will we see for the first time in some time a notorious, I mean, probably the first player ever since Flusha, but even then Flusha, that was a huge surprise, but that was in the last 6 months. Like, it's crazy. We're now seeing European top talent consider North American teams. Will Karrigan be the next person? I personally do not think so. Based off what I told you guys, I think he's better sticking in Europe with a well-noted roster around him who can still accomplish plenty than taking the risk on a North American team who would have to revamp quite a bit around him to actually see decent success. Those are my thoughts. Leave your thoughts down below. As always, my name is Jake. I will be back here tomorrow with some actual CSGO news. We got a lot of great, crazy stories out there to share with all of you. As always, thank you all for watching, and until next time, bye.